Okay, let's talk about something truly wild. We're going to dive into the story of a river that, by all rights, just shouldn't exist. It's a massive, man-made waterway built right in the heart of the desert. And yeah, it's a story about incredible ambition, but it's also got a hidden and maybe devastating cost.
Right, so think about Saudi Arabia. What comes to mind? Probably oil, right? Unimaginable wealth. But behind that shiny image is this stark, kind of unsettling reality. The country has a profound lack of water. It's the ultimate paradox, a kingdom that's literally overflowing with liquid gold, but at the same time is desperately thirsty. And that's the puzzle we're going to unpack.
And their solution to this problem? Well, it's almost hard to believe. In a landscape that's defined by these silent, sun-scorched dunes, they're not just building a river. No, they're building an artificial river network that's going to be nearly double the length of the Nile. You know, the longest natural river in the entire world. Just let that sink in for a second.
Which, of course, brings us to the central mystery of this whole thing. In a kingdom where rain is a rarity and natural rivers are basically a fantasy, where on earth is all this water coming from? How are they making this impossible feat possible?
So, to really understand this monumental project, we first have to get a handle on the crushing problem that forced them to do it. See, for decades, Saudi Arabia was relying on this hidden, ancient source of water buried deep underground.
The crisis really kicked off back in the 1970s. They had this plan, well-intentioned for sure, to grow their own wheat. But this ambition led them to drain their deep underground aquifers of something called fossil water. This is water that took millions of years to accumulate. It was like they were draining a battery that could never, ever be recharged. And by 2016, the well was pretty much running dry, and the whole program had to be scrapped.
And the problem wasn't just the farming. Nope. At the same time, the average person in Saudi Arabia was using over 300 liters of water a day. That is more than double the global average. So you had this combination of massive agricultural ambition and super high personal use, and it just put an unbearable strain on their only real natural water source.
So with their natural underground savings account nearly empty, Saudi Arabia had to engineer a solution on a scale that nobody had ever seen before. They basically decided, okay, if nature won't give us a river, we'll just build one ourselves.
And the sheer audacity of this thing is just hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about a 12,000-kilometer network of these huge, corrosion-resistant pipes running underground. I mean, if you laid them all out end-to-end, they would stretch way further than the Nile. It's a true engineering marvel that basically spits in the face of nature.
And the goal of this colossal network? To produce and then transport a mind-boggling 9.4 billion liters of fresh water across the country, every single day. We're talking about getting water to cities, to farms, even to places high up in the mountains.
But how do you just create billions of liters of fresh water out of thin air in the desert? Well, you don't. You take it from the two massive bodies of water right on your doorstep, the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf.
The entire project, the whole shebang, hinges on one process: desalination. They have 28 massive plants along the coast, and they're literally turning salty seawater into the lifeblood of the nation. And they do it using two really incredible pieces of tech.
Okay, so the first method is basically a giant industrial-strength kettle. Picture steel tanks the size of football fields boiling seawater. Then, that super hot water is moved into chambers with lower pressure, which causes it to instantly flash into steam, leaving all the salt behind. That pure steam is then collected and cooled back down into perfectly fresh water.
The second method is even more high-tech. It's called reverse osmosis, and instead of using heat, this one uses immense pressure. It basically forces seawater through this incredibly fine membrane, a microscopic filter that physically separates the freshwater molecules from the salt and everything else.
And to give you an idea of just how fine this filter is, the source material describes the pores as being so tiny that they can block a virus. I mean, a hole so small a virus can't pass through. This system is so good it filters out 99% of all the salt and minerals, and it does it with remarkable energy efficiency.
Okay, but here's the catch. You can't just make salt disappear. And when you create fresh water on this kind of scale, you also create an almost unimaginable amount of waste.
Every single day, the process of making that 9.4 billion liters of fresh water leaves behind a staggering 329,000 tons of waste.
And we're not talking about your average table salt here. No, this is a hot, dense,
super concentrated toxic brine. And to put that number, that weight, into perspective, it's the same as over 1,600 blue whales, the heaviest animal on Earth, being produced as waste every 24 hours. Just wow.
Now, you can't just pump this toxic stuff back into the sea. Doing that has had some devastating consequences, creating these dead zones that just suffocate coral reefs and kill marine life. So to fight this, engineers are getting creative. They're developing things like deep-sea diffusers to spread the brine out, or even something called brine mining, this really cool idea to pull valuable minerals like magnesium and potassium right out of the waste. So this all brings us to the ultimate question, right? Is this whole thing a blue point for the future? Because beyond the environmental cost of all that brine, there's another enormous price to pay.
And that other huge cost is energy. Think about it. The massive pumping stations you need to push billions of liters of water uphill against gravity to get to cities in the mountains, well, they consume a staggering 9% of the entire country's electricity supply. 9%!
And yet, despite these immense costs, Saudi Arabia is positioning itself as a global leader in water solutions. And in this really fascinating twist, the country with no natural rivers is actually set to host the World Water Forum in 2027, basically showing off its technological achievements to the whole world. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Is this massive project a beacon of hope? A sustainable blueprint that shows the rest of us how technology can solve water scarcity? Or is it a cautionary tale, a high-stakes war against nature where the true costs might only be revealed generations from now? What do you think?